I'm interviewing Al Hancock today. He's a high-altitude mountain climber, first Canadian to summit Mount Makalu. He has climbed K2, Everest 2 times, and his new project to climb all 14 of the 8,000-meter mountains. Very few people have done that. I introduce to you Al Hancock. Oh, listen, congratulations. Amazing what you accomplished last year, 2014. You were the first Canadian to climb Makalu in history. I mean, that's just amazing in itself. But not just that, and I know there's a great story there, but you went after that. You know, I don't know how you had the strength left in you, and certainly the audacity, but you went after that to K2. Your third attempt on K2, and you succeeded to summit K2. Amazing story. Just tell me something about it. Tell me about Makalu first.
Well, you know, Makalu was it's a hard climb. It takes, as you know, a lot of team dynamics, a lot of team spirit. Certainly, I share that accolade with my climbing partner, friend out of Montreal, Quebec, Monique Richard. She and I stood on the summit of Makalu at the exact same time, and so we'll forever share that honor together. And I'm so proud to have shared the international stage, holding that flag with her on the Makalu.
Wow, and I mean, what kind of a climb was it? How did it go for you?
You know, it was saturated with trials and tribulations, and certainly at times tears as well. We lost a teammate on Makalu, and when you're working with all these different personalities, and then a tragedy strikes, it hits really to the core. I was the expedition leader, and anytime you lose a member, be it a leader or not, but as a leader, you know, it heightens everything. And so I was so happy to have the rally and support of not just my teammates, but everybody at base camp. Everybody worked really, really hard to save this gentleman's life, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't meant to be. After the accident, we continued to climb, and again, we stood on the summit of Makalu, and I share the honor again with Monique Richard as well as everybody else.
That's congratulations. That's amazing. And then you went to K2, which I know it's not easy to get to K2 base camp. It's quite an ordeal. Tell me a little bit about that, but tell me particularly about the climb itself. I'm excited to hear about it.
You know, K2, you're absolutely right. After Makalu, I went back into Nepal, did a little bit of paragliding in Pokhara, and just rested up for a while and really refocused myself mentally and certainly physically on the task at hand, and went back into Islamabad. There again, I was the leader for the K2 expedition. It's my third attempt, or was my third attempt, and certainly, you know, the road or the journey begins where the road ends. And so in Ascoli, that's the last place that we get out of our jeeps, and from there it's a hike of 75 miles of some of the most beautiful, hostile terrain that one will ever want to find yourself in. And again, arriving back at K2, my third attempt. You know, as we both know, you never, just because you're going to the mountain doesn't mean you're going to have success. It's the individual, he or she, it's, you know, your physical, the mental aspects of climbing. Then it's the cohesiveness of the team, the dynamics of the team. And then it's Mother Nature. And so to stand on the summit, all these three elements have to line up for you. For the first 2 years, I got weathered off because of weather. Went back for the third time. Again, I'm very tenacious. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to back on K2. And I couldn't do it without the support of sponsors and certainly my friends. But, you know, we spent months up on the mountain, putting in the ropes, dialing everything in, and then we got to Camp 4 and made a summit attempt, and then you know, I got back, it was dark from the summit, and of course I had to descend in blowout snow conditions. It was a storm, and I remember as I'm descending, you know, I couldn't see where I was going, but I knew there's an anchor here, you know, going across about a 75 traverse, which is totally in the void. You know, I remember, you know, drop down 5 feet, okay, be careful, go across 20 feet, okay, stop, drop down another 20 feet, and continue going. And it was pretty scary, and you really had to be dialed in, and no matter how tired you are, you have to be totally focused, committed to the job at hand, and safety has to be a core value. Never let your guard down. Got back to Camp 4, you know, as the dark was coming in, and I remember, you know, I'm exhausted. The bottle of oxygen I had on my back is just about empty from making a summit attempt. I was excited. I had a fresh bottle of oxygen in my tent. My mattress was there, etc. And when I got into the tent, the bottle of oxygen, and to my horror, as well as my sleeping mattress, was no longer there. I went out and called into the night. If anyone needed my oxygen, I can understand. But if you have my mattress, please return it. And my pleas fell on deaf ears. I crawled back into the tent and ran out of oxygen, and had to spend the night curled up in a fetal position, and my neck kept snapping backwards, trying to stay awake because I was so cold and I didn't want to fall asleep. And I was exhausted. And it was a rough night. It was a terrible night. Again, I just curled up on the floor of the tent, and I was already cold. But as soon as you run out of oxygen, the coldness just even gets intensified. And then sleeping on basically on a little thin lining that is called the tent on the snow. It was a cold, miserable night. I remember getting up in the morning about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, lighting the stove, trying to hydrate my body, and then crawled out of the tent as the first rays of sunshine came. And then I started to descend from one long descent from Camp 4 straight back down to base camp. It was a long day. I was exhausted. I remember after getting off the mountain and being so tired and coming down through the Bolter Glacier, and just before I got to the moraine where our base camp was, I remember sitting on a rock and looking up at the mountain, and the emotions just overtook me and tears ran down my face. I remember thanking the mountain of the Identities for allowing me the opportunity to be back here 3 times, and this time to stand on the summit. We, 2013, father and son, Marty and Danelli, I was the last ones to speak to them with Adrian Hayes, and they perished on the mountain. And then this year, we lost a Spaniard on the mountain. He died as well. And so I'm very fortunate to have gotten down. And I try to educate people that, it's human nature, but for those of us, he or she, doesn't matter who it is, if you think that incident, accidents, death only happens to someone else in the mountains, you need to have a serious conversation with yourself, because you are that someone else. And the job is only half done when you get to the summit, and it's not to the summit at all costs. People often ask me as a sponsor athlete, do you feel compelled to get to the summit at all costs? And I go, no. I leave the ego at home, climb for the aesthetics of being in the mountain. Hopefully it brings out the best of you, sometimes maybe the worst. But again, it's that joy of being free, that joy of concentrating on one effort, and that's getting to the summit and safe return.
Wow, that's an amazing story. That's absolutely amazing story. And you were also a team leader, I believe, at the K2 camp, teams, weren't you?
I was the team leader last year for K2, but a very small team. This year, bigger team, and not only, and I say this with humility, I've had so much support, but not just the leader for K2 of our team from 7 Summits, but I kind of really had to set the tone. Everybody, other teams at the base camp were looking towards us to put in the ropes. So I had to coordinate everything with every other team. And it was a great time to be in Pakistan. Last year was the 60th anniversary, the Diamond Jubilee, of the first time K2 was climbed in 1954 by the Italians, who were supported by the Pakistanis. This year, you had a team of Pakistanis supported by the Italians, and they worked hard. They stood on the summit, and rightly so.
Wow, really cool. Really cool. When you were coming down, I think you had told me that you guys had to put some ropes together to get over a certain distance on the mountain going when you were summiting. Well, just tell me a bit about that.
At about 27,000 feet, when I got up and migrating to the summit, we ran out of rope. And I always keep about 70, 80 feet in back of my pack, 5mm cordelette for emergencies. And at that point, we sequestered the ropes from the, if they had any, and we stitched all those ropes together to do the final vertical to get up to the summit plateau. And so lucky we did. As I'm on the summit, I could see in the distant horizon a storm was coming, and it's coming fast. And if we never had that rope to descend in that vertical section, and it was a big, deep slope, or I should say high angle slope, 20 feet to the left or 20 feet to the right, it just dropped off to oblivion. And we only had that rope that we stitched together to guide us down. And so we were so lucky.
Hey, Al, you and I met on Everest in 2010 when you were climbing Everest for the second time and myself for the first time, the only time. And you had already climbed the 7 summits at that particular point. I mean, what drives you? What motivates you? What's your magic? What's your what's in you about mountains and just having so much passion for them?
You know, I feel like I'm like a magnet, or I should say I'm the piece of metal and the mountain is the magnet, and I'm just drawn to the mountains. I'm so fortunate, you know, everything we do in life can be fueled one word, and it's passion. And I'm very comfortable climbing. But again, you know, is the goal and the objective, and everything in between is journey. And so I'm very fortunate, to surround myself with the same minded people, to climb these beautiful mountains, to push myself. And the harder I push myself, the more I feel alive. And some people may say, you know, us climbers, we have a death wish. I say, no, we have a life wish. And I've seen death every year in the mountains, and death is right on my shoulder, and I respect death. And everything has a beginning, and everything has an end. But I can assure you that the closer I am to death, the more I feel alive. And so, for some reason, I have this saying about flipping the switch, and I don't know why, but I really bow down, and I always say, he or she who's willing to bow down to the art of suffering the most has the best chance for success.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree.
And every time I get on the mountain, you know, it's I just flip that switch. The comforts of home, nothing exists for me anymore. It's the mountain. It's the living in that tent. Cold becomes my friend. But again, I just love what I do, and I'm just so happy to found something that I'm passionate about. But again, Ted, as you know yourself, and you do it all the time, you mentor people. What a waste of success if we can't channel that into something positive. And really encourage people, you know, for people like myself and you, Ted, and others, that mountains are made of just rock, ice, and snow. But for you, the individual, it's something completely different. And so we encourage people to go out and find and climb your mountain, whatever it is. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. Be willing to fall down, but step back and say, what have I learned? And then re-engage. After all, 3 attempts on K2 before I got to the summit. I never gave up. I believed in what I wanted to do. You're
obviously not a guy that gives up. You know, that's for sure. You certainly know what it's like to be outside the comfort zone. What have you always been pushing your limits all your life and whatever you've been doing in life?
I think I have. And, you know, some people say to me, where did this adventurous spirit come from? And I go, well, you know, I think it came from the little boy who was 6. I grew up in an island in the Atlantic Ocean called Newfoundland. My mom and dad gave me lots of leeway to explore. And although I grew up right next to the ocean, but there was a stream probably 20 minutes from our house. And I remember at 6 years old going down to that stream thinking, I'm on this big adventure. And I think that's where these seeds were planted. And then, you know, I went in as a bodybuilder and I worked really hard. So I've always been a goal-oriented person. And so, you know, my late mother would always say, no matter what Al thinks he's going to do, he just goes and does it. And I think that's the joys of life.
I'm a bit like you, too. I think I remember having a similar experience when we had a cottage. And there was a little stream behind, and I imagined it to be this big river. And I put together a couple of logs of wood, and I was poking myself down. I probably wasn't any more than 5 feet wide, but it felt like a raging river to me at the time. Have you ever been like totally afraid you were going to die on a mountain?
No, I've never been afraid. Certainly, death is my friend. And I have this courtship with death. And not that I want to die. I want to grow to be, you know, excuse me, an older gentleman. But again, everything has a beginning, has an end. And I've never been fearful of dying. But it's all about making the critical decisions. So that's why it's not getting to the summit at all costs. Safety is a core value of mine. And it's about doing the right thing right all the time.
Exactly, of course. And you're precisely 100% right. But, you know, sometimes we have those moments when... I mean, I've explained it to people that whenever I've seen someone who has, you know, really is totally afraid, they usually turn around. But it's also, as you probably know, extremely important to be on the cusp, on the edge, always paying attention. Like you said, focus, focus, focus. But sometimes you get to that point where you need to hold, you can catch your breath, just stop. Catch your, you know, think it through and move on. I mean, I've had occasions where, you know, it was dicey. I'm sure you've had even more than me.
And you're absolutely right. And when we look at fear is a good thing.
fear is a good thing. You're right.
But in small
A
quantities.
limited amount of it. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, there's that fine line, isn't there?
A very fine line, but fear is an emotion like love or any other emotion. And if you let fear consume you, it's like a tidal wave and it's going to overwhelm you, and you will stop and you will freeze in your tracks and you may make a mistake.
Yeah.
So you're right. Oftentimes I put my head against my ice axe or against the ice climbing wall and just brought my chi back in balance and then continued on leading those climbs. But again, fear is a good thing. It keeps you in check, but also the respect of the environment. And when we look at people on a mountain and they're zoomed right in, you see a person who's bigger than life. And then as we zoom away with the camera, that person becomes smaller and smaller and becomes just a speck on this mountain. And that tells you, you know what? Walk with respect and humility. You're just a speck, and you're out there playing in an arena of this big, massive mountain.
You got it there. 100%. I agree with you on that. Hey, listen, you have, Al, you have made a huge decision recently to climb all 14 of the 8,000-meter mountains as a challenge. Of course, that would make you the very first Canadian, to do so. No other Canadian has done that to date. I mean, that's an amazing, huge, challenging decision, that you have taken. If I'm not mistaken, you have already climbed 6 of the 6 of the 8,000-meter mountains. Everest in 2007 and 2010. Choyou and Shishapangma in 2011. Manaslu and Broad Peak in 2012. And Makalu and, of course, K2 just this last year. And so what's your plans now? If I'm not mistaken, you're going to be heading off to Annapurna in March?
Yes, and I don't mean to correct you, Ted, but I didn't get to the summit of Broad Peak.
Okay.
So I've been on 10 8,000-meter peak expeditions, stood on the summit of 7, Everest being twice, like you said, 2007, 2010. With humility, I stood on the summit. But so that the big challenge is, for me, it's a natural progression to continue climbing. And I've decided I wanted to tackle what no Canadian has done before, and thanks for bringing that up. It's called the Big 14 Challenge. And my goal is to climb the remaining of the 48,000-meter peaks that are the highest in the world in the next 3 years. 2017 is when I want to wrap this up. And my goal is to stand where no Canadian has stood, only one North American being Ed Visters. So it's going to be an exciting time. Coming up here now in March, which is 2 months from now on the 15th, I'll be flying back in Nepal. And the goal there will be to attempt Annapurna. And then, inshallah, it all works out from there. If go to Dhaulagiri or Lhotse, we haven't decided on either one of those mountains yet. Then after that, rest up in Nepal for a month just to get the strength back, and then fly back into Pakistan. And the goal is to go back up through the Baltir Glacier, the Korkam Highway, so forth, and attempt G1, G2. So it's going to be an exciting year. And, again, these things could not and would not happen without sponsors. So if there's anybody out there who are watching this, if you want to get involved, please contact www.alhancock.com, and I'd be happy to supply with the information. And again, money is not free. I have a strong obligation, responsibility to give back to the sponsors. So I hope that they'll contact me. We can leverage our synergies together and bring this. But it's going to be an exciting time to be a Canadian, and I look forward to all the challenges that lay ahead. I embrace them.
I mean, that's, I know you do. I mean, obviously, that's the kind of guy you are. And sponsorship is so important. Actually, the kind of project you have going, being the very first Canadian to climb all the 8,000-meter mountains, is it's a wonderful project to be involved in. I mean, I'm sure for any sponsor. Al, you have a big passion in your life, and it's personal as well, and a cause. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Thanks, Ted. I do have a cause and a foundation that I'm involved with. I'm a patron for Dying with Dignity. In October of last year, I should say 2013, I lost someone who was very dear to me. They were my best friend. They were my compass in the world. And she was my mom. Her name was Rosemary. Yeah. And she died with a terminal illness. And the last week before she died, I watched her suffer. And I can remember walking out of the hospital after she passed away thinking, you know, there's got to be a better way. And so I'm a strong advocate for dying with dignity, the right to die with honor. Throughout Canada now, from coast to coast, 84% of people polled agree with changing the laws, that we need to stand up. We need to bring the idea or topic of death out of the closet to the forefront. And we all have a choice when, I should say, we don't have a choice when we're born in this world, but we should have a choice when we leave. And that's not saying, you know, when the doctor came to me and said, we've closed your mother up, there's nothing more medically that we could do. Well, then from that point on, when the medical establishment says there's nothing else we could do, that person who is given those diagnoses, they should be given a choice and counseled. My mother on Thanksgiving, a week before she died, came out of the hospital just for the day. She was in her own home, although she was in bed. But she has what we call the blue room, and we put the bed in there. And, you know, the sun was shining in, she was lying in bed, and she was visibly in pain, but her family was there. And what a beautiful way to exit this world then. But she was put back in a hospital, and the next day she didn't speak, and then she suffered. So, again, I support, I'm a strong advocate, I'm a patron with dying with dignity, and there's got to be a better way. If we had an animal, and the animal was suffering from whatever reason, society says, how inhumane of you to leave this animal alive. But yet we say with people it's okay. Well, it's not okay. It's morally wrong. And I'm here to stand up and be accountable for those laws.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's pretty well said, pretty passionately said. How much training do you do in a week? And, you know, what kind of training do you do?
Well, you know, Tez, you and I both know, as well as any athlete, you know, I try to encourage people for the best experience out there, no matter what out there. It starts in the gym. It starts with training. So, you know, when I go out to the mountains, I'm there I need to arrive in the best shape that I can. I don't train to get in shape. I train for my very survival. And so every day it's the regiment of, you know, I do some core training, abs, and obviously core training. And then from there, I'll do 40 to an hour of, 40 minutes to an hour of strength training. Then I will do stretching for another 20 minutes or so. And then from there, I'll get on the pedal bike or Steermaster, and I'll do 45 minutes to an hour. And this is a religious every day. And so again, training has to be a constant. And, you know, I'm in great shape, but again, I don't train to stay in great shape. I train for my life. My survival depends on me being at the best. And, you know, training is not just physically, it has to be mentally as well. We have to have our chi in balance. So for me, training is core training, it's stretching, it's strength training, it's cardio, I go to a chiropractor once a month, and he'll say, so how are things feeling? I will say, great, man. And he goes, you know, you're the only guy who comes in here with no problems. But it's keeping that body in alignment. Yeah. And then I see a deep tissue massage twice a month. I call it for my hour of pain. But so again, all that helps me continue. And when the body is in motion, it's like fluid motion. And then, of course, like we just talked about, then it's, you know, the art of visualization. It's training the brain. It's about visualizing your success. What do I need to get there? And so, again, I think your chi needs to be in balance. And when we talk about mental aspect versus physical, you know, like a marathon runner, if you're a marathon runner and you're in top physical shape, but not crisp mentally, as your body gets tired, you're going to want to sit down. It's over for you. The race is over. But if you are more crisp mentally than physically, or they're in balance, when that body gets tired mentally, you're going to propel yourself further. In the mountains, it's the same thing. You're exhausted on a regular basis, but that mindset has to be crisp and clear and focused all the time.
Yeah, 100%. I have one fun little question for you, and you actually already spoke about it a moment ago. So what's more important, Al? Is it the body or the mind in the mountains?
I would say the mind. If they becomes a chip in the enamel of the way you think and processing things, it's over. And as you know, Ted, is not just climbing the mountain, just living in that environment for those extended periods of time. And so again, I call it flipping the switch. You know, I bow down to the art of suffering really quick. Again, the comforts of home, nothing exists for me. I don't think about it. I do not miss it. I am there. My home is my tent. Cold is my friend, and my job is that mountain.
That's A1. Cool, Al. That was a fantastic interview. Thanks so much for doing it for me.
Thank you, Ted.
And for doing it for daretoreach.ca. Wonderful. I wish you absolutely the best luck in the world to complete your project, and this year in particular to climb however many of the 8,000-meter mountains you can pull off. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Ted. And, you know, again, you're such a rich soul. I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. And again, we talk about sponsors, but also I couldn't do what I do without people like yourself. And so I've never had success alone. When I stand on the summit, I'm really like one of these commercials where you turn around and there's hundreds of people behind you. Well, that's what it takes to get to the summit. So I've never had success by myself. When I have it, it's shared with people like you and many, many others. So thank you so much.
I was amazed when we were at on Everest together how much passion you put into talking about the people, the sponsors you did have. You had a number of them, and you were always you know, speaking about them and talking, you know, saying, expressing your interest and what you liked about them and so forth. So that's a really, you have that kind of spirit that can really, I think, help any sponsor out there.
Well, of course, Ted, at the end of the day, there's no I in team.
Exactly.
But, you know, I want to bring up something with you real quick. So you mentioned a few times now, you and I met the first time in 2010 on Everest. And you told me a story which always resonates with me, that it was 20 years before or so that you were there on your own hiking?
No, 1969. It was
a
lot
okay.
longer than that, yeah.
Okay,
When I was about 22 years old, and I was kind of hitchhiking around the world. I ended up in Kathmandu. Kathmandu had not been open that much. Well, it had been open a number of years already, but it was still pretty funky back in that day. And I met this. I talk about people changing people. I met this New Zealand guy who had just come back. Just come back from Scotland. He was on his way back home to New Zealand, but he had come to Nepal to hike up to the base of Mount Everest. He was already a professional climber, and he taught it in Scotland. And he told me his story in this, you know, I met him in this, what do you call it, a refuge, whatever, in Kathmandu. And he told me this story, his story, and it so impacted me. I mean, it just blew me away that I just said, I clicked in my head, I got to go do this too, you know,
nice.
With no experience. And well, I spent 32 days doing it. And
wow.
I got up to the base of Everest, right up to where base camp is now, pretty much about that area, to the Khumbu ice fall, and all by myself. And I don't know how I did it. I only had a sleeping bag. I didn't even have a tent. And the sleeping bag I had was a summer sleeping bag. I don't remember being cold, but I must have froze to death at times. But it was one of the most enriching experiences of my life, that's for sure.
And talk about, you know, everything we do should be fueled by one word, passion. And that's so much passion right there.
Yeah, that was a lot of passion. Yeah, that was passion. And people change people. You know, he changed me. He literally changed me. He completely put a whole new passion, a whole new perspective in my mind. You know, I knew nothing about, you know, hiking and certainly camping overnight and in the mountains, and certainly not for 32 days, right? And running out of food and all those things. But so he really changed me. I wish I knew his name. I would call him up. I would have written him a letter years ago and said, hey, listen, thank you so much. You literally changed my life.
But, you know, when you say that, someone once said to me, you know, what would you like for your legacy to be as a high altitude climber? And I said, well, it's simple. And it goes right back to what you just said, actually. You hit on the key word. I go into schools from time to time and I talk to classes and kids, and I try to motivate to get them to step outside their comfort zone. And so what would I like for my legacy to be? That one day, one of these kids grow up to be a young adult and they go, you know, I can't remember his name, but I remember this guy who climbed Everest, blah, blah, blah. And I remember what he had to say, and it made a difference to me. How cool is that? So I think maybe it's good that you don't remember his name, but you remember the message. And that's our job now, to carry that message on to someone else. Yeah,
that's absolutely the truth, and that's absolutely the way it is. And I'm sure you have a big impact on a lot of kids and a lot of people out there in your speaking tours. You know, the stuff you've done over the last number of years, the dedication you put into it, the determination, the absolute strength of mind and will and body you put into all these things. I mean, that's very impactful. A lot of people, I mean, you're lucky to have that kind of, I mean, I know you've worked on it and it's been your life, but in a sense, you're a little bit lucky, like I am, to have some of those skills.
I'm just so blessed and honored to do what I do, and again, never take it for granted, and always try to motivate others through what I do. Again, like we talked about, what a waste to have success if you can't channel it in the right direction. Exactly. And you, Ted, you do that as well. Recently we talked on the phone, and you had went and took a group of people down to Mount Washington, single parents. Yeah. And so I'm without a doubt, you have pushed people outside their comfort zone by mentoring them. And I bet you each one of those people today have came back, looked at their lives, and they were all changed because of what you do.
It's a little funny point there. After the challenge, it was a 3-day challenge on Mount Washington, and it's winter, it's December, it's not warm weather and you're hiking up with a day pack. You got 40 pounds on your back, right? Carrying your sleeping bag and everything you need to survive overnight. So, and they stayed overnight on the mountain, of course. And anyways, the next day when we had our debriefing, I heard some of them say, I really wanted to turn around, and I just, I was really thinking about it. I didn't do it. I was really thinking about it. And I said to them afterwards, I said, you had a big problem on your hands. It was me. Because I was out in front there, nice. With a 67-year-old guy. How can you turn around? How could you possibly turn around with a 67-year-old guy, leading the way? I mean, you just couldn't do it, could you? So, of course, it was a joke. But they were amazing. They, it just comes down to, making a decision in life, being, saying, I am going to do this, and, and doing it, having that determination, that passion, as you say, that thing that goes off in your mind and says, I am going to do this. I don't care for anything. I am going to make this happen. And that's what it takes.
And, the biggest or the easiest thing to do is just give up. Yeah. I'm too tired, I'm too cold, or I'm hungry, and turn around. Yeah. In 2012, I was on 3 major expeditions. I was on Broad Peak Expedition, no summit, the weather. Then I was on K2, worked hard, no summit. Now I'm over on Manaslu. 11 people died when I was there in an avalanche. Yeah. I lost my down suit. Yeah. And I remember as I was migrating back up the mountain and going for the summit, I was cold, I was tired, and a part of me wanted to turn around. Mm. And I refused. If I have done my very, very best and I turn around, I will be able to sleep at night. Exactly. But if I turn around because I'm just tired or cold, then I can never sleep with myself. So it's about challenging yourself, doing your very best, and that's what it's all about. And before we change the topic too much, Ted, talk to us a little bit, or share with me a little bit more about your website, Dare to Reach.
Well, Dare to Reach is about all the things that we're talking about. It's exactly about, going out of your comfort zone and pushing your limits, seeing what you got inside you, finding out who you are, what you're made of. And, I've been trying to do that all my life in one way or another, not just in the mountains, but in life, in business, in other sports that I have done, and new sports that I'm still doing. I'm mountain biking. I've done a lot of windsurfing in the past. So it's whatever you do in life, it's about daring to reach, going, pushing yourself to the limit that you are at that moment in time. If you're a beginner skier, you can't be an expert, but you can be the best beginner skier that you can possibly be. And if you're an expert, you can push your boundaries as far as you can within reason. Not in a stupid way. It's not about losing your life. It's about just finding out what capacity you have as an individual. And it's not about being the best in the world. It's almost impossible to be the best in the world. Even the best in the world aren't really up against everybody else, even at the Olympics. So, it's about being as good as you can possibly be for who you are. And that's what Dare to Reach is about.
Nice.
being you know, and being passionate. You only live once. I mean, God, you know, don't miss on the opportunity of exploring every part of you, every aspect of you, every hope and aspiration and goal of you.
Nice, well said. And I would agree. And it's like when people say, or they see this exit sign, wherever you go in a building, there's an exit sign. And I say that exit sign is telling you to get outside. And when you say, hey, but it's cold and there's a foot of snow, I say, you know what, get in that foot of snow, get outside. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. Dress yourself to suit the day, but don't hesitate. Get up, get off that couch, get outside, and do your best today and enjoy life. Like you say, you only have one chance.
You only have one life. You might as well. And you know, when I train on the mountain here in Montreal in the cold weather, I mean, it's hard getting out the door, but once I'm there, I feel like $1 million. I
Nice.
really, literally feel like $1 million. I mean, nothing could convince me to have not gone then. You know, up until getting out the door, it's tough. I mean, I know, God, you know, usually I go at nighttime as well, and it's dark as well. You know, it's dark. But when I'm out there, I just feel so good, so utterly, you know, in my zone.
You know, and again, when people say, you know, I can't afford a gym membership, and I go, well, actually, I could tell you something that's really cheap, and it's called, again, get outside, go
Yeah.
for a walk.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but don't. We all can have excuses, but excuses get nothing done.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's about getting outside again, stretching those legs, breathing that fresh air, and just pushing yourself. And if you say, well, you know, I'm not in very good shape, well, you know, walk a block today, walk a half a block. And then once your body gets adjusted or accustomed to that, then go a little further. But don't say I can't, because for those people who say I can't, I'm telling you something right now, you've just failed. If you say I can, I'll try, I'll do my best, that's success. And for those who say I can't, I say make a simple word substitution and say, well, why can't I?
Exactly. You lucky are the schools that get you to talk to them.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you so much.
Okay, Hal. Well, this has been a wonderful treat for me. Thanks so much for doing this
Thank
interview.
you.
I really appreciate it. And you're the guy, man. You're the guy. I'm going to be following you real closely for the next number of years. It's going to be exciting to follow those climbs of yours.
And something else I just want to share with you personally. You know, Ted, I'm really, really happy that my life is taking me to the mountains. But you know what's more cooler than the mountains? The mountains have given me friendship with people like you.
Yeah, that's
I would
true.
have
Me
never
too.
met you if I wasn't in the mountains. And so again, what's more important for me? It's the friendships that I've fostered and became a part of. And the mountain is just that vehicle that helped bring me there. So thank you.